Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And I am dropping in to tell you guys about a few pretty essential musical headlines coming from Digital Music News, which I think a lot of you might find interesting because you are avid music fans and consumers, as am I. I'm adjusting this thing right now. It's not very professional, but there we go. That's where I want it. Sorry, okay? Sorry. All right, as you can see here, music downloads are nearing extinction as sales tank 27.4%. I don't know how much validity there is to this angle that Digital Music News and Paul, who wrote the article, who we have interviewed on this channel before, are pitching that eventually it's going to get to the point where music downloads, purchases of digital music, it's just going to be phased out at some point because download sales are going to get so low and become so non-existent that the whole idea of selling an MP3, an MP4, a wave, anything is just going to be kaput. It's going to be gone. I mean, I think there's always going to be somebody out there somewhere willing to pay for a digital album. I think that is how a lot of people who enjoy artists on Bandcamp, for example, go on to support the artists that they enjoy on the platform. I mean, while it might not seem like a whole lot in the grander scheme of things, I mean, if some artist who's trying to make it and get their name out there and start a career can get $10 off of a digital album, I don't see why it would be entirely phased out. But still, the fact remains that we are talking about a double-digit drop this year in music download sales. And I myself have experienced this in my personal life since having jumped on to the music streaming subscription bandwagon. I don't really buy as many digital copies of albums as I used to. I think the last digital albums that I purchased were probably Saturation 3, and I also bought a digital copy of Nicholas Jar's Against All Logic before I realized that there was actually like a vinyl version floating around, and then I purchased that. So a lot of the purchases that I do make, if I do make purchases, are vinyl records, are physical copies. I don't really buy as much MP3s and stuff as I used to, because I mean, if I want to hear something, I just kind of hear it through the streaming service. And I imagine that's just kind of the case with everybody else as well, because as we see over the same span of time as referenced in this article, we have an overall stream surge of 403.4 billion during that same 6 month period. Again, a jump in 41.6%. And over here toward the bottom of the article, we have a chart mapping out the overall sales and streams of each particular genre. We have an industry total over here at the top with respectively 15% of money or sales, rather, coming from physical copies, 10% coming from digital albums, then a very yellow, what looks like an 8% being digital track sales, and then the remaining 60+% or so is on-demand audio streams. So a majority of the industry now, more than half, almost 70%, almost 2/3, or really actually 2/3, yeah, right now 2/3, literally 2/3 of the music industry is streaming. Okay, that is a huge sea change from music consumption 10 years ago. Moving on from there, we have it break down by genre, which I'm not going to get into every one, but I will say that hip-hop, Latin, and electronic/dance are among the genres with the most streams, racking up 79, 83, 79, so even more than just the in general total. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the rate at which people consume these genres. I think it also has to do with the means of and access to technology for a lot of the younger music listeners who consume these genres. And among the genres that total the most physical album sales, though the change is not exceptionally different, we see Christian and gospel, children, jazz, and classical. Which is pretty sad. And I guess rock is in the same realm as too, with 29% or so. But still, a great deal of the rock quote unquote sales that we're seeing, or rather most of this chart here, or a good deal of it, again, 49% is streaming. So still a very good chunk, still a very large chunk. But still the most rock, Christian gospel, children, jazz, and classical. And I think this also has to do with the age of the audience. I mean, there are probably a lot of older rock listeners who prefer listening to the genre on maybe a physical format, maybe on a vinyl format or something like that, which actually brings us to our next headline over here. Vinyl records are still enjoying double-digit growth, up 19.2% in 2018. Now, as we can already see from this chart over here, this still accounts for not a huge chunk of the music industry, not a gigantic chunk of the music industry. Surely those vinyl sales are a fraction of this 15% fraction that we're seeing over here in terms of physical albums being sold, that totaling for sales unit movements in the music industry. But still, you have to kind of respect a double-digit growth when it's a growth, even if it is a small one. And I think with the consumption change that we're seeing in the music industry right now at this moment, in terms of how people are listening to music, how they're consuming it, and with digital music, digital streaming becoming so much more convenient, readily available, so on and so forth, I think finally now we're going to see the true separation between music fans that are just merely casually, enjoying whatever's popular, whatever's new, whatever's trendy, so on and so forth, and the type of music fan who is kind of a music nerd who almost treats music as if they're like a comic book nerd or something. They collect the physical albums. They know all the liner notes. They know the artist's entire discography. They're obsessives. They think deeply and critically about the things that they consume and they listen to. For a long time, these two camps were pretty much just lumped into the same music fan camp. And these days, I think it's really going to kind of be separate from here on out, because you're going to have your music fan that just kind of like listens to shit off their phone, listens to stuff passively, listens to singles, listens to whatever's viral and trendy, and so on and so forth. And then you're going to have those fans, both young and old, who go a little bit deeper, who want to hear a whole album, who want to hear some kind of large-scale music experience. I don't necessarily think one or other of these approaches is going to stamp the other out or anything like that. I feel like both need to coexist in order to give the art form of music diversity and versatility, because not everybody wants to listen to whatever the new popular Drake or Lil Pump single is all the time. Sometimes you want to hear something bigger, better, larger, more ambitious, more in-depth. And I think the vinyl format, the album format, allows people to do that. And when you do really appreciate an album throughout, from beginning to back, and you really do think it's a special record, it's a special release, owning a physical vinyl high-fidelity copy of it, especially if it's an older album that was mixed, mastered, recorded for that format in that era, that experience, it doesn't really, you can't really beat that experience, especially if you have a great table, great stylus, great cartridge, great sound system. There's always going to be people out there who invest in that experience because they hear the sound difference, they hear the quality difference, and they want it in their lives. And it's really great that it's not going anywhere anytime soon, and that people who really care about the art form, really care about the genre, really care about physical copies, as obviously CD sales have trended down and digital sales have trended down. I think a lot of fans have kind of offloaded into this vinyl resurgence, which again, it's been going on for so long, it's hardly even a resurgence at this point. It's just kind of the new norm in a way. In this same article over here, they talked about how over here, during this past Record Store Day, which I actually thought Record Store Day was maybe a little bit on the downturn. I didn't feel as much hype for this past Record Store Day, at least on the internet in general. But apparently this past Record Store Day was the most successful. And during that week of Record Store Day, there were 580,000 records, vinyl LP sold, which is pretty excellent, which is pretty fantastic. again, that, you know, still accounts for a fraction of the overall physical album sales in the music industry, but that's nothing to turn your nose up at, and that's nothing to ignore. And there is my email inbox for some reason, because I clicked on the wrong thing. So I think that's everything I wanted to say, everything I needed to say for this video segment. Vinyl record sales are up, digital music sales are down. And hopefully you guys now are a bit more aware of the way that you and the people around you are consuming music. All right, love you. You're the best. Hope you have a good day. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. And yeah, that's all. Anthony Fantano, forever.